Greetings from Everquest Footpad. Right now we're awaiting the underfoot launch on the Mangler server, and right now I'm just reading about some of the raid expeditions, some of the first raids that we'll be doing, as well as the underfoot progression. And I thought I'd make this one last video. This is pretty cool. We're killing some trash on the way to one of the mini bosses, and these vultures like to grab Flux Hue, and it is kind of cool because we had a guild banner where we could use an illusion. We all turned into Chocodai dogs. I think that's how you pronounce it, Chocodai. Kunark era dogs. So we're killing these vultures here. So this is a kind of fun event. This was our last Seeds of Destruction raid, which was yesterday. And so anyways, I was going through the underfoot progression. One of the first bosses we kill in Brel's Rest is Fippy Darkpaw, and the lore is great because what happens is Fippy, he by killing him in the real world, by the Quanos guards killing him over and over and over again, and player characters killing him, you're actually sending him to Underfoot, where Brel is kind of awarding him by turning him into a demigod, and for each successive time he dies in the real world, he becomes increasingly stronger in Underfoot. So he's just this total, buffed up maniac in the realm of the Underfoot. So yeah, he's one of Brel looks kindly upon that. So I'm sure we'll see a Fippy Darkpaw raid here pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. What I wanted to cover were tradable poisons here. I wanted to cover tradable poisons applicable to Seeds of Destruction. The main ones being our Spider's Bite and Scorpion's Agony. What I've found is you actually can have the ingredients for up to Spider's Bite 5 purchased right from the vendor. And you could pretty much give that to anyone you want. That's what I do for Annulus. He's just a hybrid class, a ranger. He does, about a third of the damage that Deal will do, which makes sense because he's a hybrid class or a support class. So I do make the store-bought Spider's Bite and try to get about a stack to every single melee DPS or hybrid DPS that I do, or that I can for my guild mates. And so the higher ranks, so that brings to the question, like, what do you do with the higher ranks of Spider's Bite? So Spider's Bite 15, 14, 13, who do you give those to? So the purpose of this discussion really is to kind of highlight, like, who do you give those Spider's Bites to, and the higher ranks of Scorpion's Agony. You can give up to Scorpion's Agony 5 to anybody, and generally I'll give at least a stack of 20 to all tanks, especially warriors. But I tend to reserve the Scorpion's Agony 15, 14, 13s, and the Spider's Bite 15, 14, and 13s. I tend to reserve those because those ingredients are harder to get, and it's a little bit more costly a combine on failure. So I tend to reserve those for players that are so in the case of Spider's Bite, that would be berserkers, monks, and bards, as well as rangers, like non-rogue DPS. I tend to reserve those higher ranks for our guild members that A, tend to run high on the melee parse, and B, tend to have a good raid attendance. So that's like what I tend to prefer trading those poisons to. A, individuals that do deal a lot of damage, and B, individuals that tend to attend raid and will provide that damage when it's needed, kind of thing. And I tend to give this to to people right at raid time. So that's one consideration. The same thing is true with Scorpion's Agony. I tend to give these to tanks I tend to give them to warriors first, and they tend to be for warriors that attend raid. Now, with respect to the lower ranks, I tend to just give those away more freely. But that's kind of what the strategy is there. With respect to rogues, a lot of it is a lot of my guild rogues have established their skill in making utility and DPS poisons on their own. There are some that I try to give ingredients to, but by and large, most of our guild rogues are pretty good about making poisons. And so with respect to Valens and Talons poisons, generally it's just, at this point, really I just coordinate with the other rogues, and I just say, look, I'm running Valen, can you run Talon? And they're like, yep. And so we all can make our own poisons for ourselves. So with respect to tradable poisons, the poisons that we can give to other players, Spider's Bite, higher ranks of Spider's Bite, give that to your DPS that tends to be high in the parse and will attend raids. And with respect to higher ranks of Scorpion's Agony, give that to your raid warriors. We've had some interesting discussions about how much threat is generated with Spider's Bite versus the threat that's generated through Scorpion's Agony. And, it's interesting because some of the guild warriors have said that the threat generations from Scorpion's Agony is not as high because it doesn't proc as often as Spider's Bite. And just by virtue of Spider's Bite proccing more often and doing more damage, you tend to get more procs, and the more procs you get, the more corresponding threat. So that's one argument I've heard. Another argument I've heard is, they've only needed Scorpion's Agony to proc a single time, and that tended to be a time when they didn't want it to proc, that a warrior ended up dying. So, I've heard examples where, the warrior would prefer to get a spiders, and I've also heard of stories where the threat that's generated from scorpions is so high that they'd almost rather not have it. So I guess the question I'd have is for any rogues out there that have kind of played around with these two tradable poisons. I mean, what do you think? I'd really like to know. You could ultimately, getting keeping track of the parse and running logs and seeing how frequently scorpions procs, and compare that to how frequently spiders procs. That might have something to do with it, but it's really difficult to know to relate that to the amount of threat generation, attaining and keeping aggro. So it's really hard to say. That's the main point of this video is just pay attention to who's doing the damage on your raids and who's attending raid. So that's basically it. Look forward to some new Underfoot raid content, and just let me know if there's anything you'd like to see. Thanks, bye.
Let's see if I push her. I don't think I'm pushing her. Sin Arcana.